What's happening, everybody? Welcome into Phillies Stoplight for Thursday, June 26th. I'm Anthony SanFilippo, filling in for Tim Kelly, who usually hosts this event. Tim is off for a couple of days, so he's asked me to come in and take over the Stoplight for today. So I'm said, sure, no problem. I'll take it over. I don't expect it to be a long stoplight because, like the Phillies offense, there's not a lot to talk about. Not a lot getting done. And that's what happened in a three-game series with the Houston Astros. Phillies get swept in Houston, score a grand total of one run. One run in three games against the Astros. The offense was non existent. It was pretty putrid all the way through. And it was especially bad against left handed pitching. And that's what I really want to talk about as the first item here on the stoplight is the left handed pitchers going against the Phillies lineup. Now, let's start with the first game of the series on Tuesday. In the first game of the series, the Phillies trotted out that all right-handed lineup that they used on Sunday night against the Mets, which included Johan Rojas in center field and Buddy Kennedy at first base. Otto Kemp played in left field. So that meant that Max Kepler, Brandon Marsh, and Bryson Stott, all three were out of the lineup. Phillies offense looked terrible. When it came down to it, Rob Thompson inexplicably let Kennedy and Rojas bat in the ninth inning, needing a run. Both were ineffective. Rojas's at bat was even worse than Kennedy. Kennedy grounded out. I believe he grounded out. Maybe he popped out. I forget. Either way, but Rojas had a 2-0 count and swung at a pitch up that was probably out of the zone, and was ball three. Ends up striking out to end the game against Josh Hader. And I find it really telling that the Phillies think that Johan Rojas, in a spot where an extra base hit can tie the game or a home run could put them ahead, feel that Johan Rojas is a better option against Josh Hader than any of Stott, Marsh, or Kepler. Now, I know none of those guys really hit lefties well, and this decision is probably made by a computer off of analytics. But I will say this. If you use the eye test and look at just the way these guys are hitting, both Brandon Marsh and Bryson Stott had been doing better. Brandon Marsh, especially, has been doing a lot better, been getting on base, a number of hits. He's even had a few hits off of left-handed pitching. Would have been my first choice. Bryson Stott, in the last 5 or 6 games, has gotten some hits. Like, that's a guy I could consider going to in that spot ahead of Rojas. Kepler, okay, fine. I understand he's not hit. He's not looked good. Probably is a platoon guy at best at this point for the Phillies. So, okay, fine, not on him. But you certainly could have gone to one of those two options and didn't. So, while that isn't the reason they lost the game, I mean, there were 8 innings prior to that. That ninth inning was not well managed by Rob Thompson, and unfortunately, I think it was reliant too heavily on data that a computer provides. So the next night, and I bring that up, and I say that because the next night, face another left-handed pitcher, and the lineup changes, and both Marsh and Stott are now in the lineup, whereas they weren't the night before, nor were they used as a pinch hitter the night before. Is that an admission that you did something wrong? They would never say so, but it probably is. However, in this game, the Phillies still don't score. Now, the hits that they get in the second game were by Kyle Schwarber, Bryson Stott, and Brandon Marsh. I think there were 2 other hits in the game that were by right-handers, but the lefties out-hit the righties in the game. Still got shut out back-to-back. First time Phillies been shut out in back-to-back games going back to 2022. So that happens. But the more important thing, and the more telling thing, and the more interesting thing is the Astros used 5 pitchers in this game. All 5 were left-handed. Now, not every team has the luxury of having 4 relief pitchers to go to out of the bullpen who are left-handed. The Astros just happen to have that at the current time. That's what their bullpen setup is. They have 4 lefty relievers out there. And we're able to do that against the Phillies. In a lot of ways, that is kind of laying the blueprint out for the rest of baseball to look at and say, guess what? The Phillies can't hit left-handed pitching. And what it is it's not that they can't get on base or they can't get singles or work walks or whatever the case might be. They're right-handed guys in the lineup, and if you really look at it, they had a pretty bad series when you look at Bohm and Castellanos and Turner and Real Muto for 2 games of the three. They they had a bad series, but the reality of it is the Astros looked at it and said, "We'd rather face the right-handed hitters in the Phillies lineup and keep those lefties on the bench than bring in a right-handed reliever and have those lefties come off the bench because those lefties have a better chance of doing damage." So the right-handers in the Phillies lineup are not slugging the ball. And that's been the biggest problem. Alec Bohm's OPS plus at this point this season, he's been going well until this series for an extended period of time. High batting average, getting on, whatever. He's been doing some good stuff. But his OPS plus is 95. 95. Do you know what that means? That means the league average is 100. He's at 95, meaning that he is 5% below league average when it comes to OPS. That's not good. That's not good enough. And so the thing that's concerning and should be concerning is Dave Dombrowski went on to Jason Stark and Doug Glanville's podcast this week. And when he was asked about his lineup, he said he likes the lineup. Doesn't think that he needs to make a big move in that lineup for an everyday player. Now, could he change his mind? Could he go and do something different and bring somebody in? Absolutely. Just because he said that on one podcast in June does not mean that come July 31st, he's not going to be this, not going to change his mind and go in a different direction. Very well could still do that. Could be playing coy. There's a lot of things that can happen. But to hear him say that publicly and then to watch that lineup and do what they did in 3 games in Houston, that has to be a major, major red flag that gets thrown up in the air. This lineup is not good enough to, at least from the right side, to produce runs with consistency. Doesn't mean they can't produce runs. They certainly can. They certainly have shown that. They had a really nice weekend against the New York Mets, had a bunch of hits, drove in some runs. They did a nice job, blew out the Mets twice. The lineup can hit, but it cannot do it with consistency. And that's the part that's missing. Yes, no Bryce Harper in the lineup right now. That certainly hurts. But guess what? The Phillies have been 10-7 or something like that, 10-6, 10-7 without Harper in the lineup. That's pretty good. That's still pretty good, right? So it shows that they can win games and they can get hot for short stretches. But are you going to be able to play your best baseball for a month as a lineup in October if you expect to win a championship, which Dombrowski said on that same podcast? They look at their team and they think we are a contender for a championship this year. Well, something has to change. You cannot rely on these guys. Something has to give because this is not working. And this isn't the first time that this has happened this year. It's not the second. It's not the third. It happens consistently with this lineup. So it's certainly a concern. There were a couple of positives that you can take on. The second thing I kind of want to get to on the stoplight today. There were a couple of positives from the week in Houston, and the biggest one, of course, is starting pitching. And when you look at the 3 starting pitchers that went out there and threw for the Phillies, Ranger Suarez, Zach Wheeler, Christopher Sanchez, they took a very good Houston team and basically shut them down. The Astros scored 5 runs in 3 games. There was only 6 runs scored in these 3 games, an average of 2 runs a game total. The Astros scored 5 of them. The Phillies only scored 1. But these guys just were sensational. Suarez went 7 2/3 innings, allowed 1 run. It was that home run in the 8th inning. It was the only run in the game, 1-0. The Phillies lost on Tuesday night. But he allowed only 4 hits, 1 run, 7 strikeouts. Wheeler in game 2 on Wednesday went 6 innings, allowed 1 run, 8 strikeouts, only 4 hits. He did have 3 walks. He was a little wild early in the game, but figured it out as great pitchers always do, and basically shut the Astros down after a little bit of a wild start to start the game. And Sanchez was as good as he's been all season today. 6 innings pitched, a little bit of a high pitch count, which is why he only went 6 innings, but he had 11 strikeouts, didn't walk anybody, had a couple runners on base, did give up 5 hits, 1 run. Uh, but because of the 11 strikeouts, he had a lot of pitches that he had to throw, and as such, he had to come out of the game early. Max Lazar comes in the seventh inning, gets him out of it, and then Ryan Kerkering, he gives up a run in the eighth inning, first earned run he's given up since May. He's been really, really good for a long time. So you can't really blame Kerkering for giving up that run. He did hit a batter. Both runs Houston scored today were guys who got hit by a pitch and ended up coming around to score on a hit later. So a little bit of bad luck for Ryan Kerkering. But the starting pitching, really, really good. 1.37 ERA in the 3 games, 19 and two-thirds innings. Only gave up 13 hits, only 3 runs, 26 strikeouts. Those guys have been off the charts good. We know about Luzardo. He's bounced back after his 2 horrendous starts last couple weeks back against Milwaukee and Toronto. He's looking good. Mick Abel, who now has to pitch against the Braves, is the one that we got to look at and say, okay, we had a rough start against the Mets. How does he rebound tomorrow against Atlanta? And then see going forward. Is he a guy that's going to stay in that rotation? Do they potentially call up Andrew Painter? Maybe if Painter's not ready, does another guy get the call up and Abel goes back down? How close is Aaron Nola? He's probably early August at this point, is what you're looking at. So probably another 5 weeks for Aaron Nola before he can really get back to being in your rotation. So there are some things that have to be figured out with the fifth spot in the rotation. But the top 4 guys, and especially the 3 who pitched against the Astros, have been fantastic. So that's the one thing that you can sit there and go, okay, terrible week in Houston, but it's all on the hitters. Like the pitching is still right where it needs to be, and you're still very confident in that pitching going forward in any series. Really, when you look at any matchup, you look at that Phillies starting pitcher, and you're probably like, yeah, they're favored. They're going to win this game, or they should win this game, or have a chance to win this game. So you always trust in the pitching. I think that's what makes the Phillies a contender. Why Dave Dombrowski believes that they're a contender. It's because of the starting pitching. The last thing I want to get to on today's stoplight is some good news, and this is, like I said, this is positive. Comes out of Houston. Bryce Harper really looks like he's getting close, and when I say getting close, I think it's going to be as soon as Monday when the Phillies get back from Atlanta to face the San Diego Padres here at Citizens Bank Park in Philly. I think that's when Harper's getting back. He's taken some swings. He's up to 75 swings. They think he's going to get him into the cage again. They got him into the cage again. They would love for him to face some live BP. I think that could happen in Atlanta. Who's going to throw that live BP? We don't know. Maybe they get somebody to come in, fly somebody in from the minors to come throw him some live BP. I think he'll get that this weekend in Atlanta, and it looks like he could be back as soon as Monday. So that is some really good news for a Phillies lineup that seriously needs some reinforcement to it. And getting Bryce Harper back is some legit reinforcement. I still think it needs something else beyond Bryce Harper. I think, you expect Harper to be part of what you're doing in September and October, and hopefully, that's part of it. Something else is needed. Some more slug is needed in that lineup, and I think that needs to, to be addressed by the July 31st trade deadline. By the way, I saw a report from ESPN's, I think it was Buster Olney did this. As part of their power rankings, they always have something that they write about each team. And in the Phillies power rankings, he had mentioned that Bryce Harper continues to tell the Phillies that he's willing to move to the outfield if it allows them to acquire a bat that would create the possibility of, a bat to play somewhere in the infield, whether it's in one of the corner spots, either at first base or potentially even at third base, and you move Alec Boehm over to first base. So Buster only reports that, and I know everybody gets excited by that. Like, okay, maybe we just don't have to look at outfielders for the Phillies. You can start looking at corner infielders as well. I say I push the pause button on that. Even though he's reporting that, and even though Harper may be telling them that, Dave Dombrowski, also on the Jason Stark, Doug Glanville podcast, Welcome to Starkville. I highly recommend you go check it out. He said it's something that they could do, but if he would really had his druthers. They won't. They won't do that. They would rather not put Bryce Harper back into the outfield. And that is more of a protecting of the asset, in all honesty. Maybe they could look at potentially doing it for just a couple of months for the rest of this season. If you're going and getting a guy who's, a free agent at the end of the year, okay, maybe you consider it in that possibility only. But the idea is Bryce Harper's still here for several more years. You want him playing a position that's not going to put a lot more wear and tear on his body. Running around in the outfield would do that. So I think long term, it's certainly something that they don't want to do. They like him at first base. He's been pretty good defensively at first base. Yeah, he still makes some mistakes. He's a little over aggressive on ground balls to his right sometimes. Sometimes not in the right spot on a cutoff. But he does field the position well. He does play the position relatively well, especially for somebody who's never done it before a couple seasons ago. So I think ultimately, even though Buster's reporting that, I think that's more of a long shot. I wouldn't say that that's something that the Phillies are really, really considering. Right now. Could that change by July 31? Certainly. A lot can happen over the course of the next month. But I think that right now, I would say Bryce Harper stays at first base. So that's it for today's Phillies Stoplight. I appreciate you checking it out. Don't forget to read all of our Phillies coverage. We always have a ton of Phillies stuff up on Pattison.com, where Tim and I are down at the ballpark for every home game. We even pop out on the road a few times a year as well. And I know we got a couple trips coming up later in July and August. So definitely be sure to follow everything that we do there. And then Tim will be back with the stoplight, I would assume, after the weekend series in Atlanta. Will I be part of it with him? Maybe, maybe not. We'll see. It's totally his call. It's his baby. It's his gig. So I'm just here to help him whenever he needs it. So for Tim Kelly, who will be back next weekend, I'm Anthony SanFilippo saying thanks for tuning in to Philly Stoplight, and we will see you again soon here on Philly Stoplight and also on Pattison.